Okay, today let's take a look at event-driven architecture with Python and Kafka. In case you are not aware of event-driven architecture, this would be an architecture where you would maybe decouple your main server and your main database from other applications that need to use that data. A common example I always see is an ordering system where you have a customer that orders a product, and then after they order that product, the system might do various things with that information. For example, think of a system that will email an invoice, and then it needs to update an inventory system. Maybe while the user was shopping, you were capturing his or her clicks throughout the system. All types of user data might have been stored with this shopping session. So you have a whole bunch of data that you want to stick into a data store somewhere, and various applications look at the data and do whatever it needs to do with it. It might be a common use case, for example, to build a dashboard and a business insights application that is based on that data, for example. So just taking a look inside of Windsurf, I have a list of global rules that I always use, and I tailored it to this application. So I'm saying you are an expert Python, Flask, and Bootstrap developer. You are an expert software architect and build event-driven architecture with Kafka. All your code must sanitize user input on the client and server side to prevent SQL injection and other attacks. All fields must have reasonable size limits and max lengths. Field lengths and data types are to be protected on the client and server side. All your front-end code must be responsive. That's probably not going to apply much to this application. I'm not doing much on the front end. Same with this, inline styles. And this project will use Playwright for end-to-end tests. We will make use of Playwright towards the end of this series. I'm going to ask Cascade to build me a Python Flask app that also uses SQLite. Once the data is in SQLite, we want to push that out to a Kafka server. I'm going to try to run everything locally. It's probably going to have me install a Docker image for Kafka. Let's see where this takes us. All right, so I'm asking Windsurf. I am demonstrating a software application that uses event-driven architecture with Kafka. Please build me a Python Flask app. Please build me a Python Flask application with SQLite as the backend. When I add an entry to the SQLite database, that entry should also be pushed to Kafka, so the Flask application will act as the producer. Please create an appropriate .gitignore file and use the current directory for this application. And let's see where this takes us. So first it's creating the gitignore file. And I put in a directive here to use the current directory for this application. I've seen Windsurf a few times try to use its own directory. I wanted to use this directory that I created here. So there it is, getting the current directory, which is correct. Now it's going to make the gitignore file. Actually, I probably should have told it to use a virtual environment as well. Let me stop this. That's my mistake. I'm going to go here and delete this. No, I think I'll leave it actually. Okay, if you've watched my previous videos, you'll know that Windsurf is able to interact with the terminal window, which is great, but sometimes it creates a new window and sometimes it jumps between them. It just made a new one called Cascade. So that's what this is here, and this little window here emulates what's in the terminal. So it just ran the pip install command to go with all of these libraries, and now we're going to do a Playwright install to install some browsers. Okay, virtual environment is set up and all dependencies are installed. Now proceed with creating the Flask application with SQLite and Kafka integration. Yes, continue. Okay, this should look familiar to anybody that's familiar with Python Flask. This is a typical app.py file. This is usually the starting point. Get your typical imports, some config stuff. There is Kafka stuff. I don't have Kafka installed, and I assume this is going to have me install it through Docker. I'm not sure. We'll see. These are the database tables, some routes, some API stuff. Okay, like I mentioned before, I don't think there's going to be much of a front end to this. It's probably going to work off of an API and some curl commands, I assume. Then we're going to make this directory for templates. Probably not necessary because I don't expect there to be any real front end, but let's see. Now we're creating index.html. Again, probably not necessary, but I'll take it. Okay, actually looks like we're going to be able to actually use the web page to do some data entry. That's fine. Making a static directory. Again, that's a typical Flask. Making a styles file, that's fine. And an app.js file. Some fancy stuff here for our little Kafka application. And then a README with some setup instructions. Okay, good. Making a test directory. You'll remember in my rules, I asked it to use Playwright for tests. So I just think that's a good practice to try to get that in mind as early as possible with these projects. And here it is with the start of a test. It says to run the application, make sure Kafka is running on localhost 9092. Activate the virtual environment. Like I mentioned, I don't have it installed, so I'm hoping it brings me to installing it through Docker. Let's activate that venv, even though it is activated already. And let's run the Flask application. Yeah, module not found, no module named Kafka, vendor 6 moves. Yeah, I'm just going to tell it to start the application, and then hopefully it picks up that we're missing some stuff here. Okay, we need to add the 6 package as a dependency, which I guess is Kafka. Now it's modify app.py to handle the case where Kafka is not available. That's not what I want at all. I want to demo Kafka, but let's let it do what it does. Okay, so it's going to detect if there are any errors with Kafka. Okay, so I guess that would make it more resilient, but you would probably lose data if that's the case. That's a nice touch. It will give an alert if Kafka is down. Yeah, that's cool. Now, prior to recording this video, I had done a similar project, and was taking me in a totally different direction. There was no front end on it. It was all done through curl commands. Was much simpler. So I guess it depends on the mood of AI each time you run this thing, which is interesting. Now we're adding some Bootstrap. And we are spending a lot of time here getting the UI and JavaScript. Not my intention with this video series, but let's see. All an adventure, this vibe coding stuff. Okay. Let's try to run this. Nope. No module named Kafka vendor 6 moves again. Says, I apologize, let's try a different approach by installing an older version of Kafka that's more compatible. And just, we saw something pop up before saying that it was installing libraries in the systems Python and not in venv. I ignored it because I didn't think it was true because I keep seeing this .venv here, but based on what I'm seeing in the Windsurf UI, it's using the system bin Python 3 and not this venv. I don't know why. I don't really like that. Hope I didn't install anything too bad, but I'm just going to switch the GUI here to use this .venv and hope I don't break anything in this project. Let's see. I mean, I see the .venv in here. Got some stuff in here. Yeah, let's try to run it again to see what happens. Nope, no module again. It's saying there might be compatibility issues with Python 3.12. Wants to run the application without Kafka, and we can add Kafka integration later. Okay. Again, not my intention, but this is the road we're going down. So now we're removing Kafka stuff. I guess to see if we can get a basic database integration to work. Run it again. Okay, that's a good sign. Okay, it says it's running. Let's see if I can get the browser to go to this. Yep, okay, it is running and Kafka is not available, which we know. So that was good. Just for fun, let me just see if I can make an entry here. Okay, SQLite only. That's pretty nice. Let me go and find the database, which is in here. Okay, so yes, we do have very, very basic integration with SQLite. I'm able to add an item into here. And you can see there's a Kafka sent column. Once Kafka is plugged in, once the data is pushed up there, I assume this will go from 0 to 1. Okay. Just going to say that works. Let's now work on the Kafka integration. All right, first we need to set up Kafka. Let's first check if it is installed and running on your system. That should fail. Yes, cannot be found. Okay, it's going to install using Docker, which I think is pretty clean. Let's go ahead and do that. Going to make a Docker compose YAML file. Now it's going to start the Kafka containers. I mentioned before how sometimes it bounces around in these terminal windows. I'm not sure what this permission issue is here. I'm going to need to run it with sudo. Then I will go here and type my password. Throwing an exception on container config. This is really, I think, one of the best features of Windsurf is its interaction with the exceptions in the terminal window. It takes a while, sometimes a long while, and a lot of iterations, but just keep clicking accept, and it will eventually fix these problems. I don't know if it's fixing it the most efficient way. I don't know if it's the most secure way, but just keep saying yes, and it will get there eventually. This is the danger, though, of, do you really fully trust this code? I don't, based on things I've seen in previous projects, but for our little demo here, I'm just going to say, yeah, accept, and let's go. Okay, that looks a little bit better. Some familiar Docker looking stuff. Still got some errors here though. Now it's going to try to download and extract Kafka directly. Nope, I don't want that. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid the headache of Java and littering my system with more crap, so I'm saying no, please continue using Docker instead. Using Bitnami images. Again, when I tried this prior to recording it, I did not run into this issue. It was actually surprisingly smooth, which is why I thought it would make a good video, but here we are. Some Docker Compose stuff. Okay, it says now that Kafka is running, let's update the Flask application to use it. Remember, we had it working before with just SQLite, and the point of this is to make an entry to SQLite and then push it up to Kafka, where another application can consume it and do whatever it needs to do with that data. All right, here's some of the Kafka stuff here, importing, producer, blah, blah, blah. All that looks good. And let's run it again. Now I think we're back in this terminal. Yep, got this error again. Trying to reinstall again. Start the server again. Nope, do not have this module. Okay, asking to install the package explicitly. But it is already there. That's what I thought. I saw that get installed. Okay, now it's installing Confluent Kafka. I believe Confluent is the company. I don't know if they own Kafka because I believe it's open source, but I think but I always see their name attached to it, so I don't know if they provide services and support around it. Okay. That looks good. Run again. All right, that looked better. Server started at least. We have some fails here. Couldn't connect on 9092. From what I saw when I was playing with this earlier, it's going to run into a lot of issues with different port numbers and mapping ports in Docker, so probably have to do this a few times. Wants to check on the Docker processes, which now are in this terminal window. Okay, looks like we got something in there. There's only Zookeeper running. Now we're updating the Docker Compose file with the correct Kafka configuration for craft mode. I have no idea what that is. Yeah, I don't know what that means, but we'll accept these and go. Run some Docker stuff again. Docker process list again. Got a Kafka going. We've got a Zookeeper going. That looks better. Both containers are running. Let's start the Flask application again. Oh, address in use. It's going to have to stop the server. Stopping the old server, starting a new one. Okay, that looks good. Successfully connected to Kafka. Great, the Flask application is running. Okay, now we go back to port 5000 here. Remember, previously it said Kafka is not available. Now if I refresh, nice, Kafka integration is enabled and working. So let me just do a test 2 here. Create event. Nice. SQLite only. They both say SQLite only, though. Failed to send to Kafka. Not sure what that is, but I will highlight this and put it into the chat. I do like that it had some debug messages here, though, that the Kafka server is up, great, but it failed to send to it. So that's a pretty nice touch. Okay, making a code change to app.py. Okay. Stopping the server, restarting it. Now we're back to this window up here. Okay, let's try to create another entry again. Kafka integration is running. Test 3. Now there was a little bit of a delay there. I don't know if you noticed that. So now it's in the database and Kafka. So let's see if we could prove that. Let's find the database. There should be 3 entries in here. Yes, test 1, test 2, test 3. Notice the first 2, Kafka sent is 0. The third one, Kafka sent is 1. So now I want to see, well, what is in Kafka. So let's see if we can install a front end on Kafka to actually see what's in here. I'm saying according to the database, the new entry was sent to Kafka, but I would like a front end to view the Kafka topics. Can you install one? There are a few that are out there. Let's see which one it installs. Kaf drop, okay. That's the one that it gave me before. So it's going to stick it in Docker somewhere. Okay, this will be port 9000, I guess. Oh, now we're back to this other Cascade window. Now, if I remember right, this should be on port 9000. Looks like that's not loading. I'm just asking, how do I access Kaf drop? I thought it would be on port 9000, but that doesn't seem right. Yeah, that's also what it's recommending here, 9000, but I don't see it here. We're just spinning. If I go here to port 5000, okay, so the Flash server is up. This Kaf drop is not up. You're going to read the Kaf drop logs to see what's happening. Yeah, now somewhere in here it has to configure Kaf drop to connect to the running Kafka server. Again, there's probably some port numbers. I don't know. Let's see where we end up here. Yeah, some port stuff. Same thing here. Host names and ports. That's where we were getting very confused before with Docker, but okay. Restarting the Docker containers. Yeah, this is where we spent a lot of time before with ports and environment variables. Again, just keep saying yes, accept, and it'll figure it all out eventually. Not sure why it's running all of this now, though. I don't know, but it says done. Now the Flask app is in exit 1, so it failed. Checking the logs. Yeah, see, we lost something on the way back up. We might not have it in our requirements. Yep, it's added it to the requirements now. So I believe every time the Docker container goes down and then back up, it has to rerun all of this. So, yeah, that looks good. Okay, this is an updated Docker file. A bunch of system dependencies, requirements, pip install. Doing, looks like shutting down the Docker containers again and restarting them. Yeah, every time it comes up, it has to install all those libraries again, I guess. Now it's verifying all services are running. I did get that list again from Docker. Everything is up. Port mappings. Okay, now let's see if I can get to this port 9000 CAF drop. Yes, okay. Now, there's no topics available though, and the topics are where you would actually stick your data inside of Kafka and where you would pull data out from. So it's going to have to create a topic. And you can see in line 1, see all Kafka topics, including the events topic. I guess that's the name of the topic that it wanted me to use, but there are no topics available. Total topic 0. I'm saying I can access port 9000 now, but there are no topics. Please fix. Okay, it's going to add the events topic to the service in the Docker Compose YAML file. Okay, so it's adding that as an environment variable. Might have to restart again. Yeah, I'm going to restart again. That's a nice touch. Now, if that topic does not exist, the Flask app will create it. All right, cool. We'll go with that. Now it's importing a bunch of stuff from the Confluent Kafka library, like new topic, admin client. Sure. Okay, now it's starting up Flask app now, since there was a code change. Now we have some issues with imports again. Okay, looks like it fixed it. Okay, let's check if the topic was created. So let me go to port 9000 again. Again, no topics, refresh. There it is, events. One topic, named events, and there is nothing in here now because I believe when Docker comes back up, unless there's a static volume, I think that data is wiped away. So I'm going to view messages. Yeah, there's nothing in this topic now. So when we were playing around before and then had to make changes, the Docker image came back up, but there was no persistent storage. So something to keep in mind. Okay, so now it's using the API to create something in that topic. That's a weird error. Yeah, see, there's more container port stuff going on here. Okay, we'll accept that change. More Docker restarts. Okay, so again, it wants to create an event through curl, and that's great. We'll go back to that in a second. I want to try to do it again, though, through the website. Okay, so I'll do a test 4 here. Hello. Again, I expect a small delay when I hit create event. Oh, not that bad. All right, so sent to Kafka, test 4. If I go to my port 9000, okay, now there's size of 1, view messages, there it is, description hello. Okay, so there is one item in there. Now if I go back to Windsurf and say, yes, let's actually do this through curl, which is what it was doing for me before, which was pretty cool. Say yes. So we have 404 not found for that post request. It is working from the website though, so there's something wrong with the curl request. Yeah, the endpoint is /event, not /events. So let's try again. Run command. Nope, still failed. Checking on the routes, it's /API/events. Now, interesting that this wrote all the code, but it forgot and it never checked. Now it checked. Now it should work. Yes, now it works. Testing Kafka. ID of 5. Okay, let's check the database first. Test event, ID of 5, Kafka sent. Now let me go back to calf drop on port 9000. I want to view messages. There you go. So this is the one that I created through the web, and this is the one that was created through the API call with curl. Okay, so with this event-driven architecture, as I mentioned earlier, yes, the data is in the database and it's also in Kafka. So why would we do that? So again, let's picture an order system or any type of system where there is data that another system is going to need to pull in at some point and do something with it. So again, these are just stupid test messages here, but say you have a business insights, you have something that analyzes logs, you have something that updates a customer record, something that updates an inventory system. So now that you have these records here, these systems that are decoupled from your main server can now pull each one of these records either in real time or as a batch or whatever your company needs and do something with it. If you're not doing it this way, you could do more of a request-driven architecture where as part of a single transaction, your customer would purchase something, they would get an email, your server would send something to an inventory management system, it would send something to 2 or 3 other systems, and that's usually fine unless there's a lot of volume. But it also makes assumptions that all the systems are running, everything is fine. When your system becomes more complex or has more load, you can't really make those assumptions. So an event-driven architecture is usually for a more mature application that has multiple services that need to pull from the same data. So for this example that's on the screen, let's talk again about what might happen if you're using event-driven architecture on an e-commerce site where a customer places an order. So on the box on the left, we have the event type is order created. We have a timestamp, an order ID, a shipping address, payment method, product IDs, a list of products that were viewed. This might be the JSON payload for the main order, and some system somewhere might consume this data and do something with it. In the next box on the right, we have an event type of payment processed, and it has the same order ID as the main box on the left. So that's going to be the key for all of these events. Each one of these JSON payloads may be stored in different Kafka topics, but they are all going to tie to that same order ID. So again, this is payment processed. You have a credit card, card type, card number. So whatever system is in charge of processing the payment would pull this JSON payload and do whatever it does. Maybe the next step would be this event type shipment initiated. Again, with the same order ID, a shipment ID, which might be the tracking ID, the carrier, estimated delivery date. So again, you order something from Amazon and you get an email that it was shipped, and this is the tracking number and the estimated delivery date. That is probably some process running somewhere that's pulling similar data out of some data store somewhere. The next event type would be inventory updated. Once an item ships, or maybe even a little bit before that, the inventory is updated. So we deducted, in this example, 2 of these product ID, and the new stock level is 48. There's 48 of these pieces remaining. And the final event type is order delivered. So the order was delivered on April 15th, 2025, and you could probably tie that back to the shipment initiated event, a couple of boxes up. It was received on time on April 15th, 2025. And there's a delivery confirmation ID. So again, you have a single order that was placed by a customer, and that single order generated a bunch of different pieces of metadata about that order. Now you probably have a bunch of disparate systems that need to do something with these different pieces of data. And that's the advantage of a decoupled event-driven architecture like this. Okay, so now let's try to consume this data. Again, this will not be an exciting example, but now that the data is in Kafka, let's create a process that actually reads that data in real time. And we could just do something simple like let's push this data into a text file. All right, so I'm saying this is all working now. Now I want to create a consumer that can read the data from the Kafka topic. Please create a Python script that consumes this data and appends it to a text file. Each new entry should get pushed to the text file in real time. All right, doing a lot of fancy Kafka stuff. Subscribing to events, that's the topic. Looks like we're going to append to this logs, events.log file. Doing some JSON stuff. Okay, making some changes to the Docker Compose to accommodate the consumer.py file. Okay, it says the consumer is running. Now let's test it by sending a new event. So now if I go to this logs directory, there's my file, events.log. So when this came up, looks like it automatically went to Kafka and pulled in the two events that were in there. Pretty cool. But now when we add a new event, now we should have the data in the database and in Kafka, and now this consumer should also automatically detect when there's something new in this Kafka topic waiting for it. So I'm going to do another curl command, but before we do that, I'd just like to test the web first. So we'll do test 5. And again, just jumping back here, we have entries for 4 and 5. This next one should be 6. So create event. Okay, that was pretty quick. Jump back here. 6, there it is. Oh, I must have messed that up. Okay, now we'll do it with the curl command. Well, once I hit accept, we should get event ID 7. Yep, there it is right there. So now we have data in this file, in the Kafka topic, and the database. So again, you can have a bunch of disparate systems that are pulling this data and doing what needs to be done with it. Nice. Okay. Earlier in the video, I mentioned wanting to use Playwright to test this application. This is actually all working now, so I'm going to ask it to create an end-to-end test with Playwright so we can make sure this works. Actually, before I do that, it wants to check a log file to make sure it's working. Yeah, this is all stuff that we did before manually. We know it's working. Yep, all looks good. Okay, just showing you how to tail that log. I'm just gonna ask it to do the Playwright stuff. I have not had great luck with Playwright and Windsurf or Cursor. This is a little simpler though, hopefully. So let's see if we could get this to work okay. Adding some Playwright stuff to requirements.txt. No, it's creating the test. That's a big one, 132 lines. Looks like it'll be doing a post to port 5000 API events. Okay, accept that. That's installing those new libraries. Okay, let's run the tests. Python PyTest. Well, we have a failure already. of failures. Okay, I'm going to simplify this test. Like I said, I have a lot of issues with Playwright and these AI tools. I want to simplify the test. Let's just do that curl command and verify through Python that this actually reached Kafka. All right, so I'm saying let's simplify this test. Instead of testing through the web browser UI, let's test using the curl command and then check the topic in Kafka using Python commands. I don't like how I worded that. Okay, I said let's create an entry using the curl command. Let's see if that works. Yeah, so we're removing some of the browser stuff. That's where these tests seem to get complicated. Okay, I'll accept these changes. Some Docker stuff again. Change the window again. Okay, I'm gonna run the test. Let's see if this works. Nope, failed. Event not found in Kafka topic. It says, I see the issue. The test is running outside of Docker and can't resolve the Kafka 9092 host name. We need to update Kafka in our test to use localhost 9092. Again, issues with port numbers. Sounds like a simple enough fix. Okay, there's change the group ID and some debugging stuff. I didn't see a change of port number though. Run the test again. Looks like it's going to fail again. Yeah, not found in Kafka topic. Creating a test service in the Docker compose file. Okay, making some changes to the test. Okay. Okay, some changes to the Docker compose file, and let's run the tests with Docker. Yep, connection aborted. Okay, it's got to do some sudo stuff. Okay, we have 3 tests that passed. I'm not quite sure what these tests are doing, though. I didn't really look at the code. But it says we created a test service. Yep, the tests now verify event creation via the API, event validation rules, events listing endpoint, complete Kafka event flow from API to Kafka to consumer to log file. All tests are passing. Okay, let's take a look at the test, though. I'm not quite sure what this is doing at this point. I lost track. Okay, so it's posting to API events. All right, let's just force this to fail. I'm just going to change the name of this field here. Let's see what happens. Yeah, 1 failed, 2 passed. Okay, that's correct. like this to run in a more verbose mode. There's the failure. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So that's the failure. That's the failure that I just forced in here. All right. Pretty cool. So what we have is you have a simple application that writes entries to a SQLite database. That entry gets pushed immediately to a Kafka server. We then have a Python script that consumes the data that's in the Kafka server and pushes it to a log file. We've also created a Playwright test to test that entire flow. So I think we've done a lot here. I'm going to clean up this gitignore file, and I will push this up to a GitHub code repository if you would like to learn from this and play with it. If this was helpful to you, please comment, like, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.